Welcome back to Eight Limbs Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. We have Elisha Covey. Now, she's someone that I've been following on social media for about a year now, and I am really, really excited for this interview. My favorite thing about Elisha is she does not hold back. The kind of answers that she gives are so raw and real. You'll probably hear some F-bombs every now and then, and I think that's so appropriate for the modern time right now because everything isn't so PC and PG anymore. So Elisha is an entrepreneur. She is a thought leader and internet personality now who we've seen on many podcasts. I love her topics. I love the stuff we get into, and I'm so excited to have you here today. Elisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here too. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fucking fun.
Yeah, we can go.
Just throw that out there. Now everybody knows what you said is true, and if they can't handle it, just turn it off.
That's awesome. So what we did for this episode that was kind of different, I think we'll just kick right off into it, is I actually asked our fans and on both of our audiences what kind of questions they wanted to see you answer. And so we got a lot of responses on that, and I wrote them down here in my notes. So we're going to get into those, and we're just going to get right into the kind of Q&A, which we usually do at the end. And then from there, we can just let the conversation flow, and that'll kind of give us a kickoff. So one of the first ones that we got, and I think this is a great one, is like, what is your views on couples working in businesses together? Now, I think a lot of people follow Layla and Alex Hermosi. They're kind of like the standard people love to follow that are entrepreneurs or like hustler culture. And a lot of others are like, it's hard to work in the same house and the same business with your partner, especially because the sexual polarity starts to diminish. So what are your thoughts on that right off the bat?
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I don't know Alex and Layla personally, but whenever I do consume or view their content, I do get a very heavy masculine side from them. And that's just my own vibe. That's what I pick up.
I agree.
Yeah. And so to me, I know she has her certain ways that, she says she turns on and off, etc., which is great because most of the time high-powered men aren't gay. And if they were, they would be married to a dude. So it's like the high-powered men that are married to women are not gay. And so they definitely want to see their wife be in, her feminine. And something that I noticed with Charles and I working together is a lot of times when I'm pushing the ball forward, I'm in a much more masculine energy. And so in the beginning of our relationship, obviously things were moving very quickly. We were able to grow our first construction company, over 4,000% in 5 years. And it's just like crazy, right? So, but what we didn't realize is how much I was in my masculine. So if I'm working an 18-hour day and 18 hours of the 24, I'm in my masculine and the other 6 I'm asleep, it definitely can start to wear on the relationship. And that's what we saw. And it wasn't something that we instantaneously knew. We had to step back and figure this out because I'm very feminine in the way that I look. And I also have a side of me that really loves to support and take care of, but those weren't roles that I had time to really do anymore because I was so heavily involved in the business, driving it forward. So it definitely took Charles and I some time to figure out like, hey, what's most important to each of us and how can we harmonize between the masculine and feminine so that we both get what we want in both regards, not just personal, but in business too.
That makes so much sense. And it's so true. Like when you think about, and I know a lot of very successful female entrepreneurs, but it's so true. Like what makes them good at what they do is they are taking very decisive, quick action. It's aggressive. It's no bullshit. It's like in business mode. It's like, oh, sweetie, how are you doing? It's like, what's the deal going to cost me? How are we going to just go? And then you catch up on a weekend with that same person and you get an entirely different side. And they're such a sweetheart. And you're like, I didn't know she had that side.
Yeah.
Because business dealings are so different. And now we're friends. Now we can just hang out. And I totally agree with that. I think women have to really struggle more with that than men do, switching it on and off because men can just stay in all day.
Yeah. So I think what the man has to switch is very different from what the woman has to switch. So for the woman to be successful in most entrepreneurial businesses that I've been involved in, it is what you said. We have to harmonize into our masculine side and really like take life by the balls and do whatever's necessary to make it happen. However, there are other roles that we can be in that are a little bit more feminine in our creative, etc. But for men, what I've noticed is the way that you guys are naturally is perfect for business. So you don't have to switch that off. But where you guys do have to switch off is when you want to connect with us.
Yeah.
So then it's switching off. It's not harmonizing between your masculine and feminine because you still come to your wife and your masculine, but it's figuring out when it's time to turn off, right? And that's harder a lot of times.
I love that. So when you and Charles work, do you guys work together now? I mean, are you just not in the same office, I'm guessing, or do you work from home? Is there, I think actually Charles has his own office because we podcasted in his office in a
Yes.
studio. So
Yeah.
how often are you guys in the same room working, or is it like you check in at the end of the day kind of thing?
Yeah. So we used to literally, our offices connected with huge like French doors, and we would literally be in each other's fucking space 24/7. And we did that for quite a few years. It worked. Like we were able to push the business forward, but it also turned out that like, hey, this isn't what we're really wanting in our marriage. And so we tweaked and adjusted. And I do a lot of now, which is the thing that I'm in 8, 9, and 10 at, is the processes and procedures. So this gives Charles the ability to kind of do his own thing, and then I get involved as needed. And then it also gives me the space to do my own things as well. So in the beginning, we really had to link up and just make it happen. And now we have the opportunity to create something a little bit different, and we have.
Yeah, I love that. So just go deeper into that. So when you're saying process and procedure, that's like scaling the business, right? You're talking about the culture of the business. So it's GC construction is what you guys are involved in, right? Like development?
So right now, our main business is land development.
Yeah.
So what we started off in was construction. And then we quickly realized like, whoa, you can make a shitload of money in land development and real estate. And it also is where Charles' long-term goals always were. So he wants to build skyscrapers. Like that is his
we
thing.
talked about that. And he's,
yeah, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
You can feel that you can feel that he's serious about that. Like,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And for me, I'm like, I don't give a shit about building skyscrapers. So I'm just like,
that's the man. Like I heard that joke. I think Joe Rogan said it. He's like, the only reason that skyscrapers even exist is because of women, because one guy wanted to impress one girl, and he's like, I'll build my building bigger. So it's like,
right,
it is like the
watch
most
it.
thing. Like, look how big mine's gonna be. Look at
Yeah.
mine. Mine's over. You know, it's so funny to think about that.
It's just like your kids playing with Legos.
Yeah.
These are y'all's Legos, which is totally
bigger.
cool. Yeah, it's totally cool. But it's not my passion. But my passion is obviously supporting him in whatever ways that I can to help him achieve those goals. And I would say he does the same for me. I mean, before we were together romantically, we were best friends. So it's like we have each other's best interest at heart, you know?
Yeah. I love it. So I want to talk about what is your role? Like, how do you standard practice procedures in the business? Like, what does that look like for you? You're talking about like training the people?
So training, I will tell you, I do not enjoy training. It's just like, that. I'll do it if I have to, but it's not something, it's very repetitive. And I used to not think this about myself, but I actually am a visionary. So I see very far ahead down the road. Like you're on step 1 or 2, I'm on step 15, how it's going to impact step A15 and D15, right? So my head can't help but think that way. And so when it comes to training someone, it's very difficult for me to reel all of that in and come back to the like little minutia. So I usually have people do that for me. But the part that I really enjoy is looking at a business as a whole and seeing, okay, how can we tighten this ship? How can we be more productive? How can we get the right systems and procedures in place so that people don't question what their next step is? Because a lot of times what we do as entrepreneurs is we can think so far out and we think everybody can think like that.
Exactly.
And they can't. They can't. And if they could, they wouldn't be working for you. So it's like for you to expect them to, or get frustrated when they don't make the same decisions that you would make and it's so blatantly clear to you. It's just like, dude, that's unrealistic. So
that hits me right now. So relevant for me. That's exactly what I've been struggling with, is like a decision can be made by someone in the business. And I think to myself, like, where did I go wrong to allow that thing to happen? And it's like, well, they just don't think like me. They're not making the same decision in the moment that I would make. And how can I help someone think about the 300 decisions they're going to have to make? That's the challenge, is like, how do you train someone to make that many? You know, that's the thing. So
you can't. That's the answer. You can't, but you can put the right systems and procedures in place so that they understand problem solving the way that you want it done. Right. So that is my job, is to look at the company and then see all the moving pieces, not be overwhelmed by them, but be excited by the challenge of figuring out who is best suited to do this, and not who as in the person, but who as in the role, and then delineate those things, make sure that the proper support is there, the proper how-tos are there, the proper transfer of knowledge is there, whether it's from a software or a person, so that whoever I bring into that role can be successful. So I think that's where entrepreneurship gets so overwhelming and tiring is there's a lot of turnover in people just this day and age. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah,
People get bored, they're ready to move on, whatever. And then you have to hire someone else and you're like, holy shit, they dropped all of these balls. Now I have to clean up now. And so I just take that out of the game. I'm like, nah, this is easily replaceable. So the person's roles are so delineated and defined that I can bring anyone in and they can read these how-tos and understand what I'm looking for.
No, that's huge. I think that's really nice to have. And sometimes I think that could be a place that having like that feminine energy that you could bring could benefit more, right? Are you dealing with how to, like, for me, I think in the business, I can be, and not intentionally, but just way more harsh. So I learned, like, one of the first hires that I had to make was, I'm like, hey, you're going to be the one that deals with the guys. Like, I'll check in the meeting, but I'm not going to day-to-day communicate with them, because sometimes just the way that I will speak or say something, the feelings will get hurt and it wasn't intended. And I'm like, man, I can't always worry about how I'm saying things. I'm not the best person to communicate to them, right? So Milena, who's on our team, she can handle them. She's all honey and sugar, and they all love it, and the message still gets across, and it works out really, really well for us.
Yeah, that is true. And you have to be able to carry that into written form as well. So that when you're training people and they're reading manuals or they're reading how to do something, it doesn't come across as you're barking orders and then also there's no creativity or no space left for that person to add their own essence to it. So you're creating boundaries and systems and procedures for their own safety, not to reel them in and control them. So it's kind of, you have to look at it like teenagers, you create these things to protect your kids, but you also want to give them the space to figure out who they are and who they want to be, and still room to make errors and make mistakes and grow, right? But not such big errors that it really impacts your business in a negative way.
Right. Just knowing the common vision. That makes total sense to me. So it's a long way to go. You're in construction, land development now. And, if anyone knows Elisha's story, I was reading the bio yesterday, started with the cupcake business. And I just love that story because you look like you're a very, very fit person and you have a previous past and like a fitness background. So how do those two line up for you when you were involved in like fitness, especially fitness competition, which is so diet centric?
Yeah.
And also making cupcakes, like, good.
Yeah. I think that is really mindset, right? What is the goal that I want to achieve in the moment and what am I willing to do to get there? So for me, the competing physically was only to see if I could do it. It wasn't about like, I want to run and I want to be NPC. And no, it was like, hey, I've had 2 fucking kids and I'm in my 30s. I want to see if I can compete with these girls in their 20s. And I mean, I crushed it. And it was just like, oh, that's because it's science. Your body is science. So I'm always using everything that I do as a learning tool. Right? I might not stick with it. I'm definitely an explorer. So I enjoy learning new things, doing new things. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to do it forever. There's some people that are really talented at that, right? They pick one thing and they want to do it forever. And that is just not me. So it's like, I can fight that or I can embrace it.
I love that. I actually grew up. So did you know someone named Janet Layug? She was really big in that industry. IFBB. She won like Arnold, Olympia. She's won like a lot of the things. She was like number 1 ranked for like 4 years. I grew up with her in my hometown. We did a lot of media for her, and she's like so geared for it. Like she's still involved in it after her kid, and it's been like 10 years, and she's still doing it and still on top of the game. And it's like the diet's the same, and it seems like such a monotonous thing. And when I talk to her, she doesn't even seem close to burnout. She's like, yeah, this is it. I love it. And I'm like, you found your thing for real. Like, you really did. It's cool.
And that's what it is. I think that it takes both kinds, right? Not everybody can be her way and not everybody can be my way. But it's just like, it takes both kinds and you have to figure out what makes you passionate, what makes you excited, and do those things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's something really beautiful in life too, that when you start to just really, like they say, like, don't only follow your passions. Because for sure, I know people that can follow their passions too much and then they end up broke. And that's the problem, is like, if you end up at 45 and you followed your passions, you never got good enough at your passions to actually become high skill, you're going to look back and be like, damn, I could have maybe spent time differently. But there is something really special when you find something you're passionate about. For me, it's always been martial arts. Like, it's been the best balance for me for the rest of life. Like, I can have a stressful day. I can go on the mat for 2 hours. I leave the gym and I'm in my truck driving, and I'm like, no stress will come back into my mind for hours later. And it's like the one thing that keeps me really sane. Someone else could be basketball, could be boating or running or whatever, but having something like that, it's huge to have.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to have it. You have to find the way to unwind.
This episode of the Eight podcast is brought to you by Newtopia. Newtopia is an amazing nootropic solution for any entrepreneurs or high producers out there that are looking for a solution besides the traditional Adderall or Alpha Brain. Newtopia is a fully customizable box with 12 different compounds. I have personally been taking this for years. I have my entire team taking this as well, and it is an absolute game changer. There's some days you want to be social. There's some days you want to lock in and get focused data entry work, and Newtopia has a solution for you on any day. Use code Salazar to save 10% off. Love it. All right, let's get some more of these questions. So let's see. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. I want to hear your opinion on this. What is your opinion on the OnlyFans industry and how it ties into modern women? And one of the what I really want deeper on that is like the concept is that, a lot of, I'm 38, so I'm not in the like young dating scene anymore, but some of my staff, some of my colleagues are, they're 25-year-old men, they're dating. And it's like a lot of the women will want a man to be a traditional guy and open doors and pay for things and be this guy. But at the same time, they're like, you're nowhere near a traditional woman. There's nothing about you that like when chivalry was a thing, they're not you who they're going after. They're going after a woman who's like a good girl who's being groomed to be a good wife and a good partner. And at that time was probably a virgin. Yeah. So with the OnlyFans industry and I'm seeing it being very, very popular, a lot of like OnlyFans women are becoming like podcasters and kind of putting that message out like as if they're entrepreneurs because they're selling photos. So I just want your opinion on that industry and if it's a good or bad thing for what's happening right now.
That's really interesting. And I mean, you're going to have to take my opinion with a grain of salt. I've never even been on the site. So it's like, don't really know what they're saying. I haven't either,
but I've been on Instagram enough to understand what it is.
You get the gist of it.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something very interesting that you bring up, that women do want this chivalrous man in their life, but then they're not the traditional woman. So that is something that I didn't really think about, like, that's an interesting perspective from a guy. And I could see how that is. I know that for Charles and I, what he wanted when we met, what he thought he wanted was a business partner, right? Like somebody that can just crush it with me and it's like, yeah, you wanted that for a while. And now what you want is a more traditional woman. And so it's been interesting to see like what his desires are as he grows and ages. And then what am I willing to accommodate and do as I grow in age? What are my desires? How do those things match up? And so really what I think it is it doesn't really matter what you do. It matters about the two people in the relationship and what they're willing to give and take to make that relationship work, because so many things are so different now. The marriage dynamic to me isn't even similar to what it was 15 years ago.
I agree. And it's because of this.
I believe that there is a lot of that involved.
Here's my thoughts. It's because this is what happens. You're in a relationship. You could be married or, in a long term, but you have your first fight, your first really nasty little, let's just get into it. And then you go to the scroll and you're just reminded of the abundance of what else is there. Yep. Oh, he's cute. He looks interesting. He looks like he would watch that movie with me. He looks like he would enjoy this, right? And then it starts to creep in. Those thoughts are there. And it could be completely opposite, but your mind will make these fantasies up. And then you're looking at that partner. It's like our parents' generation didn't even have if you would see who was in your personal presence. Yeah. And so, you'd have a fight, you would leave and you would come back to your partner, you'd make up. Nowadays, it's so quick to call it quits and move on. And people are, having 15 conversations at the same time. So I think it is the modern, that's one of the topics too. But I do want to ask a couple more on the OnlyFans topic, because the thing I was really asking is that, what do you think it's going to do to the women who are, let's say they're 19 to 25-year-old women, and they're just jumping out of the gate. They're viewing themselves as entrepreneurs because they can make 10, 20 grand a month on OnlyFans, but overall for their future, like the way that I posted a video this morning on my page about asking men, hey guys, my men who are living like good men, high value men, would you date or marry a girl who's an OnlyFans? And it's like 95% never, of course not. So they're like, I think they're kind of putting themselves in a barrel now, because they're like, I'll make my money now, short-term money, but long-term they're going to want to find a guy, and the guy's going to want to find the pride and the respect of the partner he has that's going to carry his name. So that's really what I wanted your thoughts on.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about the same part of OnlyFans, it almost reminds me of what you would hear or be thinking about from someone in the adult industry. Right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's basically.
Yeah, OnlyFans is like this. Like it just to kind of, for anyone that's watching doesn't know, this is how it runs nowadays. Girls will have an Instagram account. And then they will post a lot of innuendo content on their Instagram accounts. Everything's like innuendo. It's very sexual. It's just like skits and scenes, and it's all meant to be very implied sexuality. And then they'll just drive you through a funnel to their OnlyFans account where you can unlock different parts of their content, and it's just porn, essentially what it is. So that's what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, hey, there's some people that couldn't wrap their mind around, okay, I'm with somebody who used to be a porn star. I think there's a little bit of intricacies and differences, I mean, most of the time, if I get this correctly, OnlyFans is just that person. So it's not like, they've been with different people, it's them with themselves, but, different people have viewed it. So I think that it's going to take, special companions that are okay with that. And from my point of view, I'm a lot more sexually open. Like, I don't think that necessarily sex always has to be paired with love. I think that sex is also like wine or, gummies or edibles. You have to understand what you're getting into and be responsible with it and understand that there's other people that could be involved potentially. So can you be respectful and do these things, right? And if you feel that you're not being disrespected by doing it and you're fine with it, then that's okay. Just know that you probably have a little bit smaller of a dating pool, right? You have to accept that. And I don't think that you and I can prove it except for maybe the poll that you did. That's a great poll. Like, how do men view it? And I don't blame the men for viewing it that way, but I don't blame the women for doing it either. So it's like, hey, do what you want to do, but just understand that there's always consequences.
Yeah.
Right?
The way that I put it in the video, and I'm kind of similar to you. I'll just say it. I'll say it how I think. The way I put it was, I'm like, if you're going to partner with someone, they're going to carry your last name, they're going to have your children, you're going to draw a lot of pride from your woman. The woman the man has says a lot about him. And imagine you have that woman and some guy's like, hey, I saw her pussy for $5 on the internet, and that could be 50 guys in the same place that you're at. That's just that takes away a lot of what a man can work his ass off to build. So you work your ass off as a guy to build something of yourself, and you have this partner that part of what men who do things right want is a woman that everyone can't have. That's a big part of it, right? So that's the whole point I'm making. I think a lot of these young women need female role models that are like, hey, that's not the row. You might make 20 grand here, but trust me, there's going to be a time where you're not going to be in that young college scene, and you're going to like ruin a lot of the potential options for yourself because they're going to know that past part. Of course, the past isn't something that should like scorn someone for, but it's becoming very popular lately.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, like I was saying, I have maybe even a little bit different viewpoint than you do. I don't think that they're ruining something for themselves. I think that they just need to be cognizant that every action we take has a reaction and a consequence. So it's like, if they don't view those good men that you're talking about as something that they would want to be involved with, they're okay with that, that being removed from their pie of men they get to pick from, then by all means, do whatever floats your boat. But just understand, like, I wouldn't do it because I know that Charles wouldn't appreciate that. And a man like Charles wouldn't. So, okay. That wouldn't be my MO. Not that I run my life thinking about what the opposite sex feels I'm worth. I really don't care. It's like, I'm worth what I personally think I'm worth. And that's regardless of what I do for money. Now, however, what I do for money tends to be all in regards to entrepreneurship, which is what I love. So it's like, you know what? I'm not going to judge them for what they do, but I think that being cognizant of your actions having reactions.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was very well said too. It's not about your worth isn't on what the opposite sex thinks, but at the same time, and even, I've interviewed Charles and talked to him, like just the way that I interpret him, how he views you with such respect. I would imagine he's like, hey, like my woman is not that woman, right? This is us. This is for me. So I'm sure that, isn't something that these good women are out doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like it's a really big, actually double standard. So men can go out and do these things. Not that they do OnlyFans, they do it in private. It's like, you're not doing it on OnlyFans, but your body count is way more than my body count is. And it's totally cool. It's like the way that women view men's body counts is like, good. He should be good in bed now. Right?
Yeah. No,
like,
exactly. I do think that's the case. And that we talked about that recently. There is a double standard for the reason though, but it's very unlikely that a woman would view that as a big deterrent. So like if you're in a dating scene and your man has a higher body count, especially if they're higher level attractive women, that's usually like, okay, like he's clearly attracting some women. That's like a plus.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. And exactly. He's going to be better. He's going to be more
Well, and it's
experienced,
not even like who he
more
was with
desirable.
before. It's like, but he picked me over them.
Yes,
So
exactly. And there's that too. But for the other side of it, the men are going to look at the women and be like, hey, that takes away their value in a lot of men's eyes. My point is, I'm not like, I think the term high value man has gotten way too out of proportion. That's something Charles talked about on the podcast, because like, what does it even mean anymore? But one of my videos that got a lot of hits was me talking about there's too many guys who like work at the T-Mobile store and just go to the gym and watch Andrew Tate's content and call themselves high value man. I'm like, dude, you're missing the point. Just because you agree with this man doesn't mean you've achieved what he's achieved. That's not the same thing. Yeah. But the point of it is the women who have the really high body counts and now they're living very promiscuous, they're taking away all the things that traditional men would have wanted to be chivalrous for. So now when they meet that girl, she could be gorgeous and she's 28, but they're like, I know 8 guys who have slept with you. I know a bunch of the people you've hung out. I know you go on the yachts with the guys who only let girls go on the yachts that bang them. So they know all these things. And it's like, you're not going to get that treatment as someone that I would date and really treat. The term is like recreational use only nowadays. I'm sure you've heard that. That's what they call it.
There you go.
A lot of girls get labeled with that. They're like, that's recreational use only. And that's exactly it. Men will still engage, but they will absolutely not date.
Yeah,
right?
So it's a total double standard.
It is. It is. But
it's like, dude, that's a total double standard. And, I mean, I would hope that people could be more open-minded than that. But I get it. It's just like we each get to have that's the cool thing. We each get to have our own, like, this works and this doesn't. And so for me, I'm pretty open. Either way, it's like, you know what, if Charles had slept with a lot of people or Charles had slept with a few people, it wouldn't have changed my mind about how I felt about him. Right. So I think that also says, that gives something to think about. It's like, if that is such a big deal to you, then maybe dive into why. Because usually when things trigger you, there's a reason. And especially if it's someone else triggering you. Because it's like something in their behavior is triggering me. So why is that?
Yeah.
Like, why do I care what they're doing? So whenever I get triggered, that's what I look for. Like, what about what they've done bothers me? And if it's jealousy, then I'm like, or if it's jealousy, or if it's, what is the other word? If I feel resentful, then I know it's jealousy. I'm like, oh, I used to think resentment stemmed from anger. But resentment actually stems from, like, in the wheel of emotions, it stems from jealousy. So if I feel resentful towards someone, I'm like, what am I jealous of that they're doing that I'm jealous of? And then I look for, how can I fix that in my life?
Agreed. Right? I think jealousy is a really nice little compass. Like, people talk about jealousy like it's too bad. I mean, I just brought this up the other day. I have people tell me, and I'm like, it's a funny thing to say. I'll say something that we're going to do or something we do. Oh man, I'm so jealous. And they would say that. They would say it in a fun way to intro a conversation about, oh, that video shoot you guys did, or the private plane you guys went on or something. And then I would be like, it sounds negative. You're like, man, well, don't be jealous. Because when I think if someone's jealous of me, that means they're having bad feelings towards me, right? And I've probably been programmed to think this isn't good now. But no, jealousy is a good thing. Jealousy is like, hey, like, someone else has something. Now I'm motivated to want the same thing. And it's us seeing it. But I think the difference is we can see like an influencer or someone that's disconnected from us living a life, and we don't see it as jealousy. We see it as inspiration. But when it's people in our own circle or around us, then it can be jealousy, right? Like, oh, why them, not me? And
it's like, well, because they put in the work. Normally that's the answer. So you can use jealousy as an accelerator.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a bad feeling. All the feelings that people try to hide from are really good little compasses,
I agree with
jealousy
that.
is one of them. I think anger can be a good one too. When you're angry about something, it's like, why? What's got you so upset? And
when you're angry about something, usually it's a boundary that's been crossed.
Yes.
And it's usually not the other person's problem. It's
you didn't enforce the boundary, right? You let that happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not enforced on the other person. Boundaries aren't about forcing other people to act certain ways. Boundaries are for yourself.
Sure.
This is how I'm going to behave if this happens. Not when he does this, I'm going to tell him no. It's just, I'm going to be talked to in a respectful manner. And if somebody chooses not to speak to me in a respectful manner, then I'm going to kindly let them know I don't engage this way, and we can talk about it later. And if they do it again, then when this happens, I'll leave. Right?
Yeah. I love that. That's a really good topic here. This could be a cool clip to have too. Like, let's define how you view boundaries, because I think a lot of people, I was on a podcast earlier in the week, and me and the gentleman were talking about how right now what's happening is there's so many experts that are emerging, and then you go online, you'll find spiritual coach, and you'll find out this person took some course to be a spiritual coach 6 months ago. Right? Fitness coach, and they're just getting started. They're nowhere near the level. And it's like they're just really faking it way too hard, too early. And so people are talking about like, oh, establishing boundaries. But I'm like, this person looks to have a really toxic relationship with people, and they're just giving you their perspective. So like sometimes you can hear something from someone, take it for fact. It could be the wrong definition. So the way I've always viewed boundaries would be like the house rules, and like me being the house, like this is the house rules, right? So like this is what I allow here. And if those rules are crossed, you're going to know about it quick. And I think it is the person's job to immediately address it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
another perspective on it.
No, I think that's a great way to look at it. You're your own house, and these are your house rules. And I actually, funny we're talking about this. It wasn't intentional, but I just read this book, the Book of Boundaries by, what is her name, Melissa Urban. She's a co-founder of Whole30. Fucking phenomenal book. And if you're a woman, read it. It's just like, I think women have been conditioned to, and not just conditioned, but we want to please. Generally, we want to take care of, we want to please. And so we forget that, hey, dude, your boundaries are your problem. It's not, people will take every single thing that you're willing to give. And that is not bad. That is human. It's like, hey, if you're willing to give it, and you can't point your finger at them and say, well, they just took so much from me. It's like, no, you gave. You gave. So like you said, it's your house, it's your rules. And one of the things that I love that she teaches in that book is she uses green, yellow, red as her boundary indicators. So like the first time that she expresses a boundary to somebody or recommends expressing a boundary to somebody, you don't even give them like what's going to happen if the boundary gets crossed, because you're only expressing how you want to live. So my house, my rules type of deal. And then the second time on yellow, then you can express, hey, you know what? This is a boundary for me, and this is how I wish to be treated or I wish to live. And if you can't respect that, then I'm going to have to, whatever the consequences. And then on red, then you actually do the consequence. And I was like, wow, that just made it so simple. And if we can stop thinking that boundaries are something I'm going to enforce on you, we're not going to talk about this because it's my boundary. It's like, no. You're going to have to figure out what makes you happy and how you want to live, what brings peace into your life, and then set up those boundaries, and then be kind enough to be clear and concise when you're communicating them to others. Because most people that care about you, I think, want to follow them.
I agree with that. I think enforcing them is where all the magic can happen, though. So it's a very big difference. Like something we'd always talk about with, within the jiu-jitsu community, which I've been involved in for 17 years, is that women who are, the victim, I don't want to drift too far off boundaries, but like women are the victim of most sexual assaults. It's mostly women. Now, there's a lot of power in women being able to establish a boundary. So if you're pumping gas at a gas station and a guy starts walking over to you at night, you at least can have the power to say, hey, don't come any closer to me. And if he starts coming closer from 20 feet away, you now know he's not going to respect your boundary. You have 20 feet to plan what you're going to do next, right? I think women have to learn to, and a woman won't try to establish a boundary if they don't feel they can enforce it to begin with. And that's where the problem comes in. A lot of women aren't afraid. So in the business setting, I heard it's the worst. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm in a community where I deal with a lot of real estate agents, and we see a lot of them talking about being an attractive woman in real estate. It's so difficult because there's so much fuckery in business because men just want to fuck you, not do business with you. And they don't know how to, what's appropriate. Is a 9 o'clock dinner a good time to talk about a client meeting, or is it a lunch, right? There's all these things that happen. But I think like women learn to establish, and there's so much power in no. So yeah, like me having a daughter, like I really want that to be more topic of discussion. Like, hey, it's totally fine to say no, and it shouldn't even be questioned why it's a no. It's a no. It's a no.
So true.
Right?
That is
like,
exactly.
She said no, bro. Shut the fuck up and move on past it. You know,
she doesn't owe you an explanation for the way she wants to live her life. So if she's saying no, she's telling you fucking no. And then if you're close enough, so for me, I don't provide reasons for my boundaries to people unless you're in my circle. So if you're in my circle in kindness,
you want to provide a reason because you want to tell them what's going on, right?
Yeah, I want them to understand, like, this isn't personal. This boundary was created for myself. And then especially with my kids, I explain why the boundary is being set, because I know that in my family, we didn't set boundaries. So I didn't have anyone to set that example for me. And I want to do that for them so that they can build easily the life that they wish to have by incorporating boundaries from the start.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So like, I mean, just the ability to want to enforce it is something that, so, and I think more men could benefit too. I'm not trying to put it in women like, hey, women don't, it's men, because men are afraid to even talk about they have boundaries for the most part, right? It's like something we talk about. I work with some guys who work in men's groups, and it's so true. Like a lot of the males will be like, I'm so tough, I'm such a badass, I don't have to establish boundaries, I don't need to ask anyone for help. It's like also fucking wrong, because it's like, no, dude, you can tell someone, hey, I don't want to talk about that, I don't like being spoken to like that. It doesn't have to be only aggressive as your response.
Of
But
course.
yeah, boundaries and establishing boundaries are huge, and I think a lot of our problems could be avoided if people could just be better to assert them.
Yeah, well, and look at them as kindness. It's kind of me to let my husband know that, hey, I need a certain amount of physical touch, or I like to have sex this many times a week, and for me, that's a need. And so if we go over a week, that's going to be like, that's my personal boundary. I need that.
Yeah.
And so you're letting them understand your needs and that these are real and this is how you wish to live your life, versus making the other person guess. That's not fair.
Yeah,
So like,
I love
so
that.
it's really communication. It's just
That's funny too. My partner is very similar to, at least, especially with like cuddling too. Like if there's not cuddling done at the end of the day on the couch, I can like feel like it's not okay. Like
you better not close both eyes when you go to sleep.
No matter how hot I am, the blanket's going over me and she's putting her legs across me, and like, this is just what it is. And I'm like, yeah,
it's sweet. Yeah, good.
I do actually respect the fact that she's not afraid to assert that. She's not just going to stay. She's like, I want to cuddle. I want to be touched. And she's very vocal about expressing that, which is huge, So another one that we have actually from her that I want to get into, because this is the piece of content that you got her started on. I don't know how long ago this was. I love it. Was about like, husbands or partners understanding their wife's menstrual cycles and like how they're going to be that week and during that time, So how important do you think that is for couples? And like from an, even to a lot of women won't even speak about that. Like some people, I know I've been around guys, what I think is actually very pussy of them is I've been around guys that their partner can be talking about their period and they'll be like, ew, like right in front of them saying that. And it's like, and these are adults. And I'm like, the hell, like versus, so then now that woman, especially that happens early into dating, that she's going to never speak about those things again. She's just going to internalize and never talk about it. And then afraid to even be like, hey, I'm going to be a little moody this week. I'm going to be a little depressive. I could be a little erratic or whatever that could be. So how important do you think it is for couples to discuss those things and know that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think for the opposite sex, if they're interested in women, to understand that if your reaction is ew, then you don't deserve to be with a woman.
Right.
Because that would be like us being like, ew, your balls are disgusting. Like, oh my God. Like,
it looks so weird.
I'm not going to be swallowing like fishtails. Ew. Like, come on, man. You were born with your attributes and we were born with ours.
Right.
And we should all be so intrigued and excited about what it is that we're presented with, this body that we get, right? Let's explore it. Let's figure it out. Let's take the time to really understand it. And I think a lot of times women get labeled as erratic, crazy, their hormones are, they're this, no. It's like, yeah, but if you don't understand the cycle, then it does feel erratic to you. But if you understand the woman's cycle, then you very clearly see the pattern. And it's going to be repetitive. And a lot of things that I think we experience as women that are uncomfortable in regards to our period have to do with our hormones. There's areas of your body that are not being taken care of, and that's your body's way of signaling to you. Because the more that I dove into and embraced who I was and started reading about the different things that impact my period, the better and better my periods got. My periods used to be 9 days long. And so I would bleed so much that like, one time I fainted, like lack of, I don't know what, but then over the years, as I have accepted who I am and been proud of it, and then worked on taking care of myself, my periods are like 3 days now. And they really are not much unless I go, for instance, if the month is super fucking stressful, I know my next period's not going to be great. It's like I can predict it because you're building up to that, right? Yeah, and so over the last decade of me exploring this and really paying attention to my body, I've been able to see how it works. But that's a deep dive that each woman has to take for herself. And then the partner that she's with, if he's willing to explore that with her, damn, he'll get so much further.
Yeah, I think that a man needs to be educated, especially just with the schedule, for sure. Just to know, like, hey, what to expect. Like, you might get a response that might be a little bit out of character for her, but there's some reasons for that.
Yeah.
And so for us, you got her talking about it, and now she'll let me know. And it's like, hey, these next couple of days, and I'm like, okay. And it's like really helps me prepare for it. I'm not a very sensitive person as it is, but I at least love that I can be how are you good? You need anything? And it changes that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And
But
I think even to say out of character needs to be worked on, because
mm,
my husband said something to me the other day and he was like, well, 7 days of the month, you were this person. And I was like, no, no, no. All days of the month, I'm Elisha. Thank you. Don't tell me 7 days of the month, I'm like one person. And then like, that just sounds psychotic and you're making us feel like we are not one person. It's like, no, no, we're always the same person. So out of character, is it truly out of character? Because the week before her period, I bet you, if you're cognizant and you start writing down scenarios and just tracked her for 3 months, you would see that the week before her period, she's almost always the same woman. Not necessarily the woman that you find to be the most, connective and outgoing, but that's dictated by her hormones. It's all very predictable. So it's like, do we all wish that we were in ovulation cycle 30 days out of the month? Sure, because it's fucking great. We're like social lubricant. Everything is fun. We want to have sex. We feel great about our bodies. Our hair looks fucking phenomenal.
So
Who doesn't want to live there? But unfortunately, we don't get that option. So it's like, hey.
That's so good. And that's something I was talking to someone on the podcast recently about that. It's like, about 4 months ago, I started using testosterone replacement therapy, and it's like low dose. And it's been absolutely amazing to have this as an option, especially now in the modern world. Everything is laced to make men's testosterone low. So like the cell phone, the food, everything about it is lower than it should be in general. So I'm really grateful that I have the option to be at this optimal state. And I've been an athlete for my whole life. I don't plan on slowing down. Just give me that little, as I'm 38, I have felt the recovery slow down a lot. And I was like, man, I feel like it's such a bummer that women don't have an option. Like for me to be on testosterone, I'm on a very low dose, but some of these guys can go on a dose that makes them feel like gods 30 days out of the month.
Yeah.
And the way you're just describing, it's like, it's such unfortunate. Women can have like an ovulation hormone, like just feel like that. Oh,
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? It's like, but if you
You'd have too many people at the end of it, though. They'd be making too many babies, I think.
Oh my God. But once you learn to understand it and appreciate it, then you can start booking the things that you need to get done that associate well with those behaviors.
Ooh,
so for instance,
so interesting.
Yeah, you have to understand, like the best time for me to tackle a huge, intense new project is going to be during that ovulation phase, because I am like, let's fucking crush. Everything makes me excited and happy. And my brain is moving so quickly. Like I can get so much done and I'm not tired at all. Right. And then I can go out and go to dinner with you, have some drinks, meet people. I'm like friends everywhere. But then you go to the week before my period, my hormones are literally dictating to me to pull back and observe. So pull back, observe, and be critical. So the reason it's doing that is because if you got pregnant in the first stage, then now your body needs to start thinking about what the fuck am I going to do with this kid in 9 months, right? So I need to be critical of everything I'm doing, everything I'm seeing, where I'm headed, right? And so when I know that I need to analyze something critically, that's a great time for me to book that in.
Yeah, I think that like this is stuff you don't hear anyone speak about, and I can.
It's hard.
Yeah, the hard shit. Yeah, that's the beauty of these modern podcasts, though. We can actually talk about things, and before you know it, that's the whole thing I was saying in the beginning. It's like I was like, I would view you as a thought leader, and it's like you probably like, yeah, I liked my thoughts, but maybe you didn't know how much the world would like them until you started letting them get out. And
I had no idea.
A lot of people like my thoughts. It's not just me, because we all like our own thoughts. We're living in here. So we're like, hey, of course my thoughts are the best thoughts. You can think that, but it's very different when you try to, like, the world needs to see people talk about these touchy subjects for sure. And that's one that might not be too touchy, but it's one that you don't hear many people speak about. So I love the idea. Women can plan their month, if they have an opportunity to plan their schedule around their ovulation cycle and their menstruation cycles to prepare, what's going to come in the month.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest gifts entrepreneurship has offered women, is they can have more control over that, because the 9 to 5 working schedule, that is geared towards men. And of course it is. You guys were the ones providing. So of course
we made it up. Yeah,
you made it up, and you made up something that worked for you. Duh. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, wow, as women, I can see, and especially because I've had a ton of staff, it doesn't work as well for them, and when you expect the same thing from them, 28 days a month, it's like, oh man, this doesn't work as well. And especially if you're hoping for creative input, right? So you just have to learn to use it to your advantage versus looking at it as a disadvantage.
I love that. What aspect, or like what kind of presence does fitness have in your life right now? And I think this has happened to a lot of people. I've known a lot of people who've been very involved in well, to backtrack, like I always view fitness in two different scenes. Like there's the aesthetic scene and then there's the performance scene. And I never viewed them as the same scene, even though, the aesthetic scene is equally as difficult. The work is done before you go on stage and you're just going out there to show what you've created. And a lot of people, for like the performance scene, when, pick the sport, you still got to go out there and score the fucking touchdown or make the guy tap. So that's a different world. So I think a lot of people that I know who've been in the aesthetic scene have hit a burnout level after, and they're like, okay. And a lot of them just completely cold turkey stop in fitness as a whole, their diet and all that. It's like, where are you at with it?
Yeah. So for me, the competing was just to see if I could. It was just a challenge. I like challenges. So when I did it, I never intended to continue more than one or two. I competed in two shows. That's all. I didn't care.
Okay.
It was just to see if I could do it. But I could see how, I didn't have a trainer. Charles trained me. So we just did it together like everything else. But it was just a bunch of hard work and science, right?
Okay.
We wanted to see like, okay, how does this work? And I counted my macros like down to the macro for 10 years. That I did. That was only like a year span. But the other 9 years were just out of my own because I enjoyed it. And then as I've continued to age and learn about my body, I've realized that, you know what, my macros need to fluctuate. So for macros to be the same every day, that's built for a man's body. And for women, it is not the same. The week before your period and the week of your period, you need 80 to almost 300 calories more a day. So if you're not giving yourself that, and you, because you understand the science, will know that you're basically starving yourself. So when you do that and you trigger your body to think that, then what does it do? It starts withholding. It starts holding everything in. It's like, oh, starvation mode, click, hold everything.
It's going to hold water, produce cortisol, create all the stresses. Yeah.
Cortisol, which makes you even more hungry, which makes things not digest correctly. So I think there's so much more science to understanding that you need to follow this cycle. And it's hilarious for me whenever I make these comments because I will call them meatheads. Like, no such thing. Men and women are the same. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Like you don't even have that conversation because it's like you clearly have no clue about bodies and how they work and how hormones work. And even stuff that we don't understand at this point is what really intrigues me. How do our feelings and our energetics contribute to the way that we digest and hold food?
A lot, actually.
I think so too.
You just touched on a couple of things I want to dive into. One, there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot. And I come from a family with medical doctor. My father was a physician, brother's an ER doctor. And I was like from a family of like medically trained professionals. And they were wrong about a lot of things because they viewed what they were taught in school as fact. And what the fuck is a fact? It's like something someone discovered, but there's so many ways. So nowadays, so much of my father practiced was actually incorrect. He didn't know that at the time, but it was, right? And so it's like this course, you got to always allow your mind to be open and people can figure things out. And it'd be foolish not to look at someone who's mapped something out and has it like Wim Hof with the ice baths. I started ice bathing 5 years ago. I have one of those cold plunges, the brand Cold Plunge, actually a podcast sponsor, probably going to come on right now with the episode. But, that was crazy at first. And someone figured out that's an amazing way there's so many health benefits, but Wim Hof was like extreme for doing it. So yeah, I can absolutely see the way we feel and the way that we view our food, digesting differently. There actually was a study done. There's a book called Own the Day, Own Your Life by Aubrey Marcus. I'm not sure if you know the company On It or not.
Yeah, I know of him. I follow him, I think.
Yeah. Yep. So, a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. And you talk about a study they did where they basically gave the same exact participants a health shake or the same shake. One group thought it was a weight loss shake and one group thought it was an indulgent milkshake. And it was a double-blind study. And how they viewed it actually affected how it affected their body. And there's a lot to this. So if you're having your cheat meal, if you're like, for me, like my little guilty pleasure is fucking candy. I don't feel bad about it because I trained hard enough to still have abs. If I started eating candy and it made me look like shit, that's when I would finally be like, okay. But I like it. Okay. And I know Melena's probably going to hear this. You'd be like, stop eating candy. But I will. But at the same time, when I eat the candy, I'm not telling myself like, oh, this is fucking destroying me. These cells are killing me. Literally what I'm thinking while I'm eating it is like, I'm going to burn this shit off. This is nothing. That's how I think. And I think that because I think like that, that's what happens.
Yeah. You're like basically telling your body.
Good.
Yeah. Just basically telling your body, just process this straight through. It's worthless. The only thing I ate it for was taste.
I think if you sit there and eat self-loathing and just depressed and sad, like, oh, I'm just going to get fat and my bikini's not going to fit because of this. And I think that's where a lot of people end up. They're sending all these really bad emotions down with the food.
Yeah.
And now that food is not going to give them the same type of, result. So
I have to agree with you. And I cannot wait for science to prove this like even better. Yeah. Because I think we're all starting to click. It's all starting to make sense to how energy is working within us and out of us. And so it's just like, dude, this is a big deal. I don't know exactly how it impacts, but your question was, how do I view it now? And so now I'm a lot more, maybe a holistic approach. I also was on a podcast where the guy, what did he call it? He called it your ancestral diet. And I was like, I've never fucking heard that before, but I have to tell
you. Find and eat, right?
Yes. So whatever your background is. So for instance, I'm Persian.
Oh, you're talking about your regional diet. Yeah.
You ancestrally. So what am I made up of? I'm half Persian. And the funniest thing is whenever I eat that way, like if I go visit my aunt and uncle in Miami, stay there for 10 days, I swear to you, I eat double the calories. So I should be gaining weight, right? I eat double the calories. I'm happy as fuck. We have dessert every night. Some Persian fucking God knows what they're making, but it's all so good. And eat double the food, and I come back looking even better than I left.
Yeah,
and it's just like
it could be the heart happiness, the soul fill, like
probably a mix of all of it.
There's a lot to that, but yeah, you're right. I heard someone speaking about it recently. So my background is Colombian. And so the diet would be a lot of cultural fruits, a lot of fish, a lot of red meat would be part of that diet, right? It wouldn't be a lot of there wouldn't be a lot of pastas. And there is truth to this. Like we're genetically made to digest certain foods better.
Yeah. Right? And it's not like you can just say, oh, well, my family moved to America 100 years ago and now my genetics are completely void. It's like,
they matter.
Nah, man.
Yeah, they matter. You can look at a Samoan person and look at and say genetics matter.
Right.
Forearms this big, and you're like, yeah, you're from a different gene pool than I am, and it's you can tell that.
Yeah,
and I think like even back to the heartful happiness. I'm not sure if you do any like biometrics trackers. Like I used to wear a Whoop and an Oura Ring. Now I have a bed that tracks everything when I sleep. But your HRV, your heart rate variability, that's how they measure if you're in and out of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Then your state. Idea to break it down, your higher HRV while you're sleeping, the better. It says your body is in a better state. So I used to geek out and track it too much. I'm like, oh, if I have 2 beers on a normal night, my HRV is going to dip. So I probably shouldn't have the beers. This was when I was more performance tracking. And then I started to realize I can have friends over. We can grill steaks. We can drink beers, smoke weed, eat dessert, do all the bullshit that's bad for me. But we're just laughing all night and talking shit. And it's like sky high HRV. Why? Because I'm fucking happy. My soul is happy. I'm like, yeah, this is life. Like you go to bed and you're like not a care in the world and you're falling asleep, still laughing at some stupid shit your friend said. And you wake up and you're like, man, what is that? Like, science doesn't support that should be happening, but it does happen. I've seen it way more than once. So you got to look at that. And that's when you have to start, kind of answering your own questions and going, yo, like there's something to this. I can read the literature and it says one thing, but no, I'm feeling something different. And
you just hit it. It's what are you feeling?
Yeah.
Each of us are different. And it's the same thing with women's cycles. Like you have to slow down enough to allow yourself to feel, to really take the time to, check it out. What am I feeling? How am I feeling? It's also really nice to have the data because like you said, you were able to catch that, whoa, there's something off here. Because if all you would have looked at was the data, then you'd be like, well, I'll never drink beer again. Right. And that's going to make you miserable. And so you can drink your water, never have beer, and then you're going to go to bed and your HRV is going to be low.
Yeah. That's exactly. So you realize like we all kind of find our own path to navigate. I think, I don't know if you know who Laird Hamilton is. You familiar with him?
I feel like I've heard the name.
Yeah, you probably have. So Laird, interesting, like Laird Hamilton is like one of the original big wave surfers from Maui, Hawaii. So he was American raised. He's Gabby Reese's husband. They have a huge cultural brand now. He's been on Rogan's podcast several times. He actually was the guy who pioneered surfing those gigantic 100-foot waves that you had to get towed in with a jet ski to surf. Yeah. And in the movie Point Break was kind of about what he invented. So he was in the new Point Break as a cameo as the guy in the jet ski, but he's just an all-around legend, stud. Nowadays, he's revered as like a holistic living expert. Always barefoot on the beach, never wearing sunscreen based on his skin tone. It's all about temperature, the diet. But at the time, there's a documentary about him now. He was like everything that I believe people were telling me I was crazy and I was wrong. And this was like for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he because he was so good at what he did, he still built a huge following because he was one of the best surfers to ever live. And he was just an absolute courageous human. He would surf these waves that could kill him. Like one wave would kill him and he would still make it. So he built this huge following. And now people follow him culturally, but everything he'll go in a 220-degree sauna and then right to an ice bath and back into the sauna and then ice bath. And like, that's really bad for your system. He's like, no, it actually makes me stronger. Science shows now that it does, but at the time it didn't. So there's so much to that. And yeah, the message, people need to experiment with themselves. Some things are going to make you feel really, really good. And then when you find those things, I say just keep doing more of them, and just you'll find it like that.
More of the things that you love and make you feel good and less of the things that don't.
That's it. All right, next question I want to get into, because this is a good one for all the parents out there, especially the entrepreneurs, what is parenting like when you have the strain of running a business, right? So like for me, I have 50-50 custody of my daughter. My ex-wife and I are best of friends. She lives about 30 minutes away. So we exchange her every couple of days back and forth. And we're both able to, impact our daughter. But for me, it's like on the days that I do have her, and she's only 4, so I'm still very present with her, I try to be really present, but I also want her to know what work is, how daddy makes money, like how important this is. Like, this is why we have what we have. Like, what are your views on the entrepreneurship and parenting? Are your kids in school? Like, how old are your children?
Yeah, so my son's going to be 15 this year and my daughter 13 in a few months.
Okay, so you're past all the stages that I'm talking about. They're like adults now at this point, yeah.
Basically, I'm just like literally with my son, I'm like, hey, let's go do this or that. Yeah. He's like, all right, mom, let's go. And I'm just like, you're like my built-in best friend now.
Yeah, I would say that I heard moms say that when they have sons like that, it's like having a little broke-ass best friend.
Dude, he's cool as fuck.
Yeah, your best friend, but you still got to pay for everything to do. But you're like, all right, come on, I got you. Yeah, right.
I'll pay for it. He's just like the coolest shit. I mean, I loved him when he was little, of course, and I enjoyed all of that. But the older he's gotten, the more fucking fun we have. And I'm definitely an explorer, and I have really high tolerance for just let's see what happens. And so he's a lot of fun because of that with age.
I think I saw a clip of you talking about something that I thought was awesome too, was you're like, I want to be the one to have the conversations with my son, right? Like when sex comes up and like, or when you get a girl, like, hey, what's up, dude? Like, let's not have you making these mistakes. Let's talk to me about it, right? And most moms wouldn't think like that. Most moms would avoid the subject. Oh, I can't talk to my kid about these things.
I don't avoid anything with my kids. There's no topics that are off limit, and there's no topics to feel weird about. So
do they feel comfortable to come to you? Like, would they come to you? Hey, mom, I got this girl. I really like her. I think that something's going to happen.
Yeah. Like, so he hasn't hit that yet because he's 14. Sure. But I mean, the summers we usually go abroad. But the summer before last, he was sitting on the lanai with me and he was like, yeah, my friends were looking at porn, just jumped straight into this whole like combo with me. And I was giggling inside because I'm like, I wonder how many sons would tell their mom this and like go into depth about it. And afterwards I was just like nonchalantly was like, oh, did you have that conversation with your dad? And he was like, God, no, he would freak out. And I was like,
that's how you know you're winning. That's something I always say. But first of all, I think the first thought would be like, what kind of porn was, like, what'd you see? Like, what was it,
Well, see, and I think that's the difference.
Because you don't ask.
It's like, I don't care what kind of porn it was, because it's like, I'm not going to make him unsee it. And I wouldn't fucking want to. This is the real world. Like, you live in the real world. This shit happens. Let's talk about it. And so to me, it's really like, first of all, my goal is to always hear, what does he want to share? Yeah. And the cooler I am and the more that I can remember that, like, it's just fucking life, and allow my energy to stay chill and calm and open and curious, the more he shares with me. And the more he shares and sees that my reaction is always that I want the best for him, the more he feels open to hearing, hey, do you want my thoughts? That's usually how you want my thoughts on that? Is that why you're asking? And then he'll say, yeah. So I'm never like, you need to, you should. I'm just like, hey, I can give you my thoughts. And I usually make a joke of it. I'm like, well, I am old, so I have seen some things. So if you want to know that, then I'm always happy, because we know, like, every action has a reaction. Yeah. So I always want the best for you.
I love that. I think that's a huge goal for me. I always say, like, I really hope that, like, my daughter's 14, 15, and she's in trouble, she can come to dad, because I'm not going to flip out, and I'm going to be the best resource for her.
Yeah, you start that.
Yeah, exactly. And be like, hey, like, I'm going to come get you, and I'm going to apply every resource I have to make sure you're good, but don't ever feel fear to tell me something if you're in a bad position, because then it only gets worse,
Yeah. And I think you start building that connection close. Like, I started talking to my kids about sex at the age of 4. Like there's books for it. And so we just kind of graduated through all the different books during the different ages. So it never was weird for us because I firmly believe you're either the first person or the last person to tell
Well, I
you.
agree 1,000%. I mean, my ex-wife just sent me a video 2 days ago, which is even funnier. So like I was raised in a household. My dad was a medical doctor. Nudity wasn't a taboo thing in my Colombian household. I saw my dad naked, mom naked until a certain point, but I just family. It was like, that would be it. Walking around, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I was the same way with my daughter when I was a kid. It wasn't like there was a certain point, of course, I get dressed, but she's in the bathroom, I'm in the bathroom. And so there's this funny little picture of it. It was like a hippopotamus. It was like a little kid's toy, like a playing card. But the way the hippopotamus's face was shaped and looked, it looked kind of like a dick, which is even funnier. And so she's asking my daughter, who's like 3, like, what is this? And she goes, penis. That's calling it. And it's a funny video. Sends it to me and I'm dying laughing. But it's like you hear some people that are the extreme, they keep everything from their kids' ears. They would never let their kids see them even shirtless. And it's like, dude, like it's just a human body, it's just normal skin and flesh. And there was a time where parents would be naked in the woods with their whole family. It wouldn't be a big deal. Nowadays, the more taboo you make something, the worse it can be, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
And I mean, I think that is what creates the most of the body.
Right.
It's like it's in your own family. We can blame it on society, but really it's with you. It starts with you as the parent. You have the biggest impact. So if you're the one telling your kids that your bodies are amazing and it's just part of being human, like mom has boobs, you have a penis. I also think it's a big deal in like younger children. Please use the right words. Stop telling them they have twigs and dingleberries and fucking shit. I'm like, no, you have a penis and balls. Like, let's refer to them as what they are. Because when you refer to it as something different, it almost makes it seem like it's a dirty thing you can't really talk about. But why?
Yeah. My father was a doctor, so the whole thing was we didn't even use balls; it was testicles.
Testicles.
He didn't like nicknames like that. He would be aggravated because he was just very like matter of fact, like this is what it is. And to me, that was my reality, and nothing was really taboo like that. And it's funny because at the age when we're 12, 13, and the kid down the street, his dad would leave for work, and everyone could watch porn on his dad's TV. I was so uninterested. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I wasn't as interested in that as other kids. Like, holy shit, a naked girl. Because I'm like, just like it wasn't a big deal at the time. I think it changes it. You know, the leniency as parents. I had so much freedom as a kid, an insane amount of freedom. My parents would buy me alcohol, Black and Mild cigars from my friends when we walk on the beach, like anything I wanted, they would do. And I never been arrested, never got in serious trouble, never did half the shit that all the people did growing up because it was all just so already there for me that I wasn't seeking after it. You know,
it makes sense.
There's a lot of truth in that parenting style.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think that there has to be consequences. Like, oh, hey, if your curfew is midnight and you come in late, like I'm going to be excited to hear that you had fun and your friends had a good time, but just know, you're grounded for tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. Like the consequence is still there, but the consequence isn't the priority in our relationship. You as my son or my daughter are my priority and your happiness is my priority. Consequences will come, but it just is. So we just do it and then we move on.
I'm sure you're a cool ass mom. I'm sure your kids like always stoked. This is an important subject, I think, and this is actually from that book, Own the Day, Own Your Life, which I agree, I believe to be true. It's a sad statistic, but like 80% of young men now are learning sex from porn. That's how they're learning to have sex. So here's what happens this is where that leads into the modern, this is what I'm talking about. This is why the OnlyFans, I talk about these things a lot because there's topics that we hear a lot, and I have this 4-year-old that I'm putting into the world. It's like, you're a dude, you're 15, 16, 17, you're learning to have sex from watching porn. And if anyone's ever seen porn, which I'm pretty anti-porn these days, even though I did watch it for a lot of porn in my life, it's absolutely opposite from what sex really is like in a relationship. Of course, there are going to be elements of that extreme aggression and submissiveness. And of course, some women do love that sometimes, but it can't be it's not, your goal in sex is not to just degrade a woman and just be, it's extreme and taboo and find weird shit to involve. And that's what these boys are learning. And so now young girls are feeling like that's how they have to receive it, because that's how all their peers of young men are learning that's what they want. So these girls are like 17, 18, 19. They're thinking that's what sex has to be like, because if not, they're not cool, or they're not, the guys don't want them. And that's even more fucked up, Wow. And so that's where I'm always trying to get men to stop, especially, I've been involved in martial arts for a long time. And one of the best things about that is the impact it could have on the culture, because I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt, because I have accomplished a lot. any gym that I visit and I go into, I get to impact young men a lot. And when conversations come up, I'm always like, yo, get the fuck off porn. Like, that is nothing for you. That is nothing for you. If you're standing in Chipotle and there's two girls in fitness clothes, all porn's going to make you do is just constantly sexualize everything you see in them because you've seen 100 girls naked that week on porn. It's not good for the mind, and it's not good to approach people like that. So I think that like that's a big problem, that sex education has changed a lot because now boys don't have to go talk to parents. They can just go to the internet and learn a very weird theatric style, like degrading sex from.
I think that's you hit the nail on the head. It's theatrical.
Yeah.
But it's produced. It's like, dude, if you could see all the producers that are in here and the themes that were created, and it's not real life. But I'm curious, what do you tell them to do instead? Because they're doing porn, like they're doing, as boys, they're doing porn because, you know, they want to whack off. So it's like, what do you teach? What do you teach?
The people that I'm talking to aren't 15. I'm talking about 21, 25. They're young men. These aren't the teenagers. I probably wouldn't have the kind of conversation with a kid I didn't know as a family friend that age. But I mean, yeah, I think they would hang on to that. Like, I don't do that personally nowadays. I don't think that's good. I have a partner though. So at the same time, it's like, I'm like, why waste that when they can just make our sex that much better? Yeah. I'm so much more charged, and she's going to get such a better performance from me when she's the only one that my penis touches, you know? So I think that's the better solution. If they're a young boy and they have to whack off, I guess, then I don't know. I mean, they can open their Instagram and they're going to get one thing, but I just don't think going down the porn wormhole is good for what happens.
No, I agree. And I think that it's almost like, trying to think of a connection here. You know, before we had Mars, you know, and candy bars everywhere and all of that, when you wanted something sweet, you actually had to bake it, right? So it's like, okay, well, I have to put the time and effort in to make this cake, and then I can, you know, have my sweet tooth. So what are we teaching boys instead of just jumping on porn, getting hard, and then whacking off in 5 years?
It teaches impulsivity.
Yeah. So what are we teaching them? Because I don't think like self-pleasuring, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they need to learn that and learn their bodies and understand themselves. But no one, as far as I know, and I didn't have this thought process until you said you were talking to them about it. What is the alternative we're offering them? Yeah. Because before porn, men were still whacking off, like, and men and women, whatever.
The idea would be there. Like, I think I'm picturing like you see some girl in 1940s and you saw her at the store that day and she had a pretty face. And then later you're like, oh, that girl was so hot. Like, it's all you need. All you need to visually go there.
So it's like what we should be teaching them is the alternative to porn, because we're not going to get rid of porn. Too bad. And it's already here and it sucks and it's damaging, whatever. Yeah. But it's like, we can teach them that, hey, when you're self-pleasuring, like, that's your time to use your creativeness. What are the things that you can come up with? What are the things? And then you can transition that into dating later in life. But I think that if we're not willing to have these discussions or think about it, then what we're telling them is like, don't eat that candy bar. That's a bad candy bar. But we're never willing to show them how to bake a cake.
That makes sense. Actually, there's a couple people that I can think of now that probably they work in this industry more and they would have some more insight on it. But yeah, it's the truth. It's like, sure, like at that age, you're talking about 14 through 18. I think that's when masturbation makes sense, because you're literally just figuring out how it works. This is how this thing works. But then at a certain point, I do think it does weaken you as a man. I found, like, in general, like that instant impulsiveness. So like, I just got turned on and now I'm going to immediately just allow myself to release that. It's like, why, dude? Like, you haven't done anything to earn it. What does it take, especially like a beautiful woman? It takes some work to get her to fuck you. In any day and age. And like, if you're not going to pay for it, it's like, you're going to have to do some things. And then by the time you get to that point, that release is going to be a lot more pleasurable because there's going to be a human being there with you. Yeah. So it's like, I think a lot of these men have to work less now. They're like, what I got to put in time? I can just go home and watch 50 girls like her, jack off and call it a day. That's another problem, right? That's my point. And it's like, no, like, to get the girls that you're going to want, the girls that look like those girls in the videos, it's not going to be, no, come here. It's not like that. It's like, it takes time. So, you know, it's something that, like, the topics do come up more and more. A lot of my guys who lead men's movements and these modern masculinity movements talk about these things a lot. I was a part of a men's group when I first moved to the city, and I liked it. I liked the topics that we're in because a lot of these men needed it. You know, they need to hear that. And I think, like, a lot of the guys, they just live their life behind a computer screen, sexualizing women. But then like, you can feel it on a guy. You know how, like, if you're a woman, you probably know this because you're an attractive woman, probably more than anyone. You go out You can feel creepy energy. How would you define creepy energy? There's no way to really define it. You just feel it. You sense
Yeah.
it.
Like he's a creep.
Men can sense that as well in other men, and not creepy towards me, but I can just feel it. That's the idea of like a good sheepdog can sense when a fox comes around, right? You know, like, there's someone coming
You know
around.
what's so funny? You're so right. I went to this event and there was a dude there and he was such a fucking creep. And I'm like, I'm married. Like, what are you doing? And like, I kept like boundary, no, green, yellow. And then I was like, fuck, dude, red. But there was a picture that ended up in a group of us, like 10 of us, right? And Charles saw the picture immediately. He was like, "Who's that fucker?" And I was like,
He knew.
I was like, this is the funniest thing. He was like,
Yeah.
there's something fucked up with that dude. And I was like, the funniest thing that I told him the story. And he was just like, I knew it. And I'm like, that's so funny.
Like I said, I only talked to Charles for like an hour and a half, but I can tell he's very perceptive. He seems
Good.
very aware, like, and I joked about that because I was like, you look like the kind of guy you wouldn't want to fuck with. And then as I said that, there's like a Barrett 50 cal behind him on the wall. And I'm like, how do you even have that, dude? I was like, that's hilarious to think about that, but true. So the point of that is men can sense that too, right? And what do I think produces that creepy ass behavior? The fucking generation nowadays. You think like you can be a guy and you can just watch porn. Like I live right here on the beach in Treasure Island. There's this beautiful event that happens every Sunday. It's called the Treasure Island Drum Circle. You guys would probably love it. It's like you come down. It's just, there could be 100 to 300 people on the beach, and there's 100 drums, and it's tribal drumming. It's a tribal dance circle. There's kids, there's families. It's a whole vibe, right? And it's amazing. There's a guy that always comes around. He's just lurking, being so weird. And it's like that dude you can feel is a very predatory sexual energy, and he's looking at women. You feel that. And it's like, why? Because he's seen more than he's earned the right to see. Does it make sense? Like he hasn't been in the bedroom with these women, but he's seen what they look like in those scenarios. And that's the problem with it. It's like you're getting it without the work, without the status, without the achievements to unlock that. And so then
I think you hit the nail on the head, man.
Yeah.
You've seen more than you've earned.
Yeah. Wow. And then you get to act a certain way and it's not right. So that I think I'm really anti-porn and OnlyFans. And I say that not because I've been above it. I've watched a fair share of porn. I fucking think those OnlyFans girls are hot as hell. I can look at it and be like, wow, that's a very attractive woman. However, I don't like when that shit pops up on my feed. So I constantly just say, don't show me this content. I'm like, I don't want to see this shit because you don't even have to follow the pages. I don't follow them. They just come up. Wow. And it's like, and you realize there's an agenda. It's like what I follow, fitness, business. That's who I follow, and friends. When I'm seeing this shit, I'm like, why are they trying to insert this shit in my feed to get the man distracted to go down this whole wormhole? So there's a bigger agenda, and you can feel it, always, for sure.
There's always a bigger agenda.
So I bet you are the cool parent amongst your friends, a bunch of your kids. I love that. But I think the question we drifted from was that when your kids were younger, and you've been an entrepreneur for how long now? Over 10 years, right?
Yeah, close to 15, 20 in there.
I was asking is like entrepreneurship and kids, like what is the difference in the mom that has a 9 to 5,
Yeah, I think for me, it was a blessing. I ended up divorcing my children's father when my daughter was, I think, right under 1. So for me, it was a blessing. Was it hard as fuck? Yes, it was. But would it be hard as fuck if I worked a 9 to 5 as well? Of course it would. Yeah. So for me, I was able to bring my kids to work. Like I had a huge back area where they had a whole play place. They had everything that they could want back there. And so I got to have them there. Then I was also fortunate enough to have a nanny too. So I was able to adjust my schedule to accommodate being with them as much as I possibly could. Of course, that wasn't every minute, but it's like, you know what? All in all, I felt really good about what I was able to provide for them. And then also the amount of time that I was able to be there for them. And I think that you just have to be very cognizant of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Maybe not for everybody, but for me, winning is addicting. So it's like, you get hit from that, right? I'm like, oh, I crushed this. Now I want to crush again because it felt good. And so I have to remember that there's other things that also give you that same dopamine hit. Right. And so sometimes it's just taking a moment to disconnect from work to find that pleasurable feeling in your other things, even though they might feel like work too, but it's like, there's still pleasure to be had. It's just a little bit different. And so you have to remember to switch between those, harmonize between those hats.
I love that. When you just reminded me of one of the things I said to Charles after he was talking about winning that he loved was a quote. And it's not my quote, but it's Ed Milet. And he was like telling this kid, he's like, his son was staying home in the hotel room and they had a game the next day and his college friends are going out and drinking. And he's like, hey, I'm proud of you, bud. Just remember, winning will always be more fun than fun is fun. He's like, it's going to feel a lot better when you win that whole fucking golf tournament you're doing tomorrow morning. And you're the guy, because that's what gets remembered, not the night that you guys had.
That's
And
so
I
true.
agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think that one of the things that I like about your content the most too is that like I think more women need to know that like you can be an entrepreneur and still be feminine, still be a mother, right?
Yep.
Still be a good partner, still travel, still live your life, right? Like if you look at your page, like still and like I said, not dive so deep into the masculine where you become just like this harsh. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but you feel it. I know those type of women because I've seen, I work in, there's a city here. You see that. It's like, I'll on your Instagram, sometimes you'll read those cards. You're doing it during Christmas, right? And it's like the tone of voice and the energy you're reading with, like, oh, it's like such a sweet, calm, like calming little thing. This isn't like some like, hey guys, so the numbers today are this, and we're gonna fucking crush it. So it's like it's so good people to see role models like that and be like, hey, you can do those things. A lot of women who are like, hey, I don't want to have a 9-to-5 job. I don't want to have to go in the hospital and work overnights as a nurse. That's like one of the shittiest kind of night shift careers. But they also feel like, but I have kids and I can't do something. I can't. They think this. They believe this worldview to be like, I can't. And then you always find someone that has taken your same circumstances and killed with it.
Yeah.
So,
to me, I think that that's all mentality. I really, truly believe I can do anything I want to. Now, I am fully aware that if I play basketball, I'm never going to be Michael Jordan. I mean, come on. Yeah. Like, I understand that, but there isn't anything that I'm presented with that I feel obligated, like, oh no, I have to, or else. I always know that there's another way to solve my problem, right? And I think that that has actually served me, that and having tenacity, being willing to do what it takes.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think it? So I had a gentleman on my podcast. He's a very successful entrepreneur, supplement entrepreneur. He owns several brands, and one of them is a sponsor brand. They make a really high quality nootropic, like brain supplement. And as I'm interviewing him, and I really like, he's built a hell of a business and a culture there. And I was like, Matt, what advice would you give all these entrepreneurs right now, especially these young guys who are 19 and they keep thinking that entrepreneur is a cruel world? Like it's cool, but it's not as cool as it doesn't feel as cool as it looks sometimes, you know? And he's like, take a fucking personality test before you think you're ready for that. And I was like, is that what you think you are? I don't know how much you're into astrological signs and the month you're born and whether you're into that or not, but I am curious, what is your sign?
I'm January, so Capricorn.
Capricorn, okay. So I can tell you're not like super into it because you even had to ask. You were like,
it took me a second, but it's like I didn't used to. I'd be like, oh, that shit. Like I don't have any problem with anybody that does believe in it. Sure. But one of my really close girlfriends gave me a book a couple of years ago that was like all about Capricorns, and to humor her, I read it and then I was like, oh fuck, this is me.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's like I hate to entertain the thought that I could be affected by these things, but yes, I'm a Sagittarius and I'm an ENTJ on Myers-Briggs. And if you look up any of the characteristics of me, you're like, that's fucking Tony. Like, and I'm like, why? It doesn't make any sense. But what I was going to ask is, do you think like there's a certain personality type that people have that make them better suited? For instance, like you said, tenacious, right? In the very beginning of the conversation, it's like, there's decisions that have been made by people that work for our business that I have been like, how the fuck did they think that was what they would do there? But I'm like, but at the same time, it's because my personality is so, like my self-belief is so high. Where someone's like, hey, I wouldn't think, we're not qualified. I'm like, yeah, we can do it. And I'll fucking figure it out. Tomorrow. I'll YouTube the shit out of it. I'll Google it and I'll come back when I'm prepared tomorrow. So you think it's like a certain personality trait people have? And is that their unique personality in the way that like two siblings have different personalities? Or is that how they were raised? You know?
I don't think it's,
because two kids that are brother and sister can have complete different personalities.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of, there's 6 kids in my family.
And is everyone go-getter like that? Is everyone like?
No, what I'm thinking is like out of the 6, only 2 of us are capable of being entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so what the fuck is that? Like that,
dude. So it's me and my baby brother, and it's like we're the ones that are tenacious. We're the ones that are like, we'll make it happen. And then my sisters very much let life happen to them, I feel like. And it's kind of like, oh, this happened. And I'm just like, dude, fucking, I don't know, make it work. And then,
like that.
Yeah, a lot of people like that. So I don't think it's how you were raised. I think that might have some impact in it, but I really think it's, are you going to decide to look at everything as a lesson and what can I learn and how can I grow?
Yeah, but there had to be something that caused people to, because there are people like, I have a feeling, I know your answer to this, but when people tell you, Elisha, you can't fucking do that, doesn't that just fuel the shit out of you? Like, yeah, right, not you.
Yeah.
Aren't you like me? If someone told me, I'm like, bitch, it might
Why?
not be next month, but give me 12 months and you're going to eat those words.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
guess,
like competitiveness in me. But I think some people just have this thing and it's really hard to quantify. It's really hard to define. It's really hard to predict. But, part of the why I started this podcast, I know a lot of amazing entrepreneurs. I had a really deep conversation with Charles about this. And it's like, there's just some people that have this thing.
it's magic.
The brain doesn't turn off and they can't stop. Like he was saying, he was like, dude, I'm never going to stop thinking about business. Like it could be 9:00 at night and I'm thinking about something. And it's like, I'm the same way. Some people need that Netflix time. They need that decompression time. They need to go just fuck off. It's like, and I'm kind of answering your question for you, but like, do you have any clue to what it could be?
For me,
yeah, I'm talking about you because you are unique.
Yeah. I think it's wanting to get the most out of life.
Yeah.
Like I'm always looking for like, what is the most? What is the best? What is there to offer me? Like I have a very unique feeling towards death. It doesn't scare me. I don't care. I'm like, okay, well, when people die, I don't get all like, oh my God. I'm just like, well, I guess it was their time. Like, so it was their time. So for me, I'm like, I don't know when my time is, but while I'm here, I want to experience everything to the max. So how can I do that? And the best way for me to be able to do that is to be open-minded. Like this isn't here to crush me. This is here to teach me a lesson and I'm going to get cool tools from it. It might be painful. I might not like it, but it makes life a lot more fun when you look at it as a game.
I love that. I think that's amazing. Yeah, life is just a big game too. Everything is a one big game. There's that term Nila. That's like that yoga term, divine playfulness. The universe is just playing a game all the time, and everything is just a small game of each other. There's something to it that, like, I definitely do not think that every person will be a good entrepreneur. There's an absolute truth to that. Like, you would not, like, you need, like, I talk to somebody and I'm like, hey man, like, I love you're ambitious right now, but like, bro, I know you, like, you need to mentally check out. Like, you like to turn your phone off for the weekend. You like to, I'm like, that first couple of years starting your shit, there's none of that. You're going to be 24/7 in communication because you're trying to make this thing pump cash. And if it, you can't risk an opportunity to not be there when a client calls you. You have to do that. And so some people need it, but I think there's just something to some people, kind of what you said earlier. Like I used to think, like, when people were super successful and the people who had the yachts and all the money, I would be like, they must have either got given it by a parent or got set up with a network of connections, or this must be really fucking smart and disciplined. And so it was like, I moved out to the city. I moved here 3 years ago from only 2 hours away, but from inland Florida out here to the beach, where this is like the spot in Florida besides Miami. It's Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg. It's yachts and all the rich, it's the vibe over here. And I ended up, because I have a cool story, a cool background, because of the fighting, because of my presence, I was quickly making friends with all the who's who guys in the city. I'm on the boats, I'm on the planes, I'm on all the parties, on the rooftop, and invite only things. And I got around all these guys who were absolutely killing it in business. And I think the biggest realization for me was that, and this, I do not mean this to sound arrogant at all, but it's like, I was like, none of them have anything that I don't have. I was like, there's nothing missing. Like, they're just dudes that, like, they're confident and they're competent, but like not extremity. They're just like doing it. But I think it comes down to just like having that self-belief. Like, no, I can do it. Like what you said, like, if someone else figure that shit out, I do believe I'll figure it out. And I think I could probably do it faster. Like, I'm just quick with things like that. So I think that some people just have it. And I think the reason I'm asking this right now on this podcast is because I think some people have it that might not give themselves credit for having it. Yeah. And maybe hearing it from someone like you or someone like me is like, yeah, dude, like I do think like that. Why am I not doing something? Yeah. Some of the most brilliant people ever are just not taking action. And I know that if they would completely unlock their life.
Yeah. And I think maybe what you're kind of hitting on is we've glorified entrepreneurship to a point where everybody feels like, well, unless I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not super fucking cool and awesome. Mm-hmm. But that is not what we're saying. We need both sides. Like, just like I know that I can't be an employee, I'm not a good employee. I hate it. I hate listening to people talk about what they think they know they're doing. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I've done it. And I would just be like, I see 50 better ways to do this, but okay, you don't want to hear my opinion because I'm your staff, right? Which that sucks. That's not the type of company I build because I always want to hear people's ideas. But I think that we need all types. And so even if you're not inclined to be an entrepreneur and you enjoy turning your phone off, that doesn't, on the weekends, that doesn't mean that you can't maximize who you are. Yeah. And by maximizing who you are, that's just energy. Money is energy too. So if you're maximizing who you are and you're putting that out in the universe, the energy of money will follow. Correct. So if that's what you're looking for, it's going to come. You just have to do the right things. And that doesn't mean that being an entrepreneur is the right thing. So there's many ways to skin a cat.
Sure. No, I'm with you. I wasn't trying to say entrepreneur was only like success path in life.
No, I didn't know from you.
Yeah, I think people can accomplish things sometimes. Some people will be way better suited with the C-suite position. Someone else has the risk. They get paid well and they get to have those weekends. There's a lot of people that thrive in that environment and that are great analytical builders. But I definitely think there's something where it's like, if there was like a pill that people could take, just make them unlock their belief in themselves, it would change the world, like it would change a lot. And a lot of times you talk to someone like, man, like they're so talented, they're so competent, they can figure things out. But when it comes to a year later, have you started your thing yet? No. Like, it's like, what, what is it? Just want to wring their neck sometimes. But there's some people that you can't stop them. I was talking to Melinda yesterday. She's like, I have friends who are so competent and are taking no action. And I have someone else who is probably not suited for the role that they're in, but they built a website, they're running ads, they're getting clients, they're doing it. It's like, what is that difference in people? And, it just, I guess who wants it more, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I think maybe there's something to be said for timing. And I'm a big believer of, I've done it both ways. I've forced things to happen out of sheer like grit and willpower. And then I've also allowed the universe to take the lead, and I co-created with it. And I have to tell you, the times that I'm open to co-creation, the projects are the best. So it's just like, what, maybe they're still learning. Like, okay, do I need to force this, or do I need to allow co-creation to happen here? And that's not, at least for someone like me, that was not an easy lesson to learn to harmonize between those two. Wow. So life is interesting, man. And the older I get, the less I judge. I'm like, fuck, man.
How old are you?
37.
37. Okay. So we're the same age. Are you familiar with Bob Proctor's content? I'm assuming yes.
Maybe. I'm horrible with names, dude. Like horrible. And plus, I don't watch a lot of like.
Okay, yeah. Bob Proctor's one of the early. He was one of the guys that helped produce the movie The Secret, The Law of Attraction. He's been his whole life teaching. He's an older gentleman. You've probably seen him. Probably. On clips and quotes. Yeah, his whole thing is that he's like, and a lot of people disagree. Like you get the Grant Cardone mentality. It's like, nah, man. You don't need to wait for it to be perfect. You're just going to plow through obstacles. I believe in that. But at the same time, Bob Proctor's whole thing is like, if you want to, like when it's meant to be, it's going to be easy. Yeah. Doors are going to open. It's going to be a state of flow. You're just going to meet that person. They're going to park next to you at the grocery store and they're going to be the next connection. That's your next 10K. And then it goes from there and it just flows. And I do think that's the truth. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you don't work. Yeah. But it means that you monitor, like, am I doing the right work?
Yeah.
Right. So for someone like Grant Cardone, it is flowing for him, but this is what he's supposed to be doing. That's why it's easy and that's why it flows. And that's why he's able to like hustle and crush it, and because he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Right. Yeah. So I think that that's the difference. When you're operating in what you're meant to be doing, it feels easy, even though it is still work and effort.
That's well said. I mean, as we wrap it up, I do want to ask this important. This is one of the last questions I had. So it's a good one. And perfect timing for me to ask it is that how important is money to live a good life for you?
That's such a great question. And my answer has evolved over time for sure. So, I mean, I went from nothing to having a lot of stuff. And then I realized, literally, I got back from Europe. I went on a 2-month trip to Europe earlier, like December and January. And I really embraced the way that they live there. It's so much less consumerism. Things are so much less important because they don't have a space. And so I realized, like, whoa, we have so much space here and our homes are like our purses. The bigger the home, the more we fill. Right?
Yeah, in Texas especially. Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Oh, yeah. God. I'm like, that's great. Just what I needed. Right. So being exposed to that and really allowing myself to understand and accept the way that they live and try to acclimate to it gave me a really intriguing experience. I definitely came home and was like, why do I have 100 pairs of stilettos? Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing here? What gap inside myself am I trying to fill with things? So
Mm.
I've been on a big, like, yes, it's nice to have all the things, but then what I'm curious about now, and I've been experimenting with, is who owns who in that scenario? Do I own those things, or do those things really own me? And energetically, they're a drain.
You just hit
And
something on the head. I had like, yeah, so true. It's like you can become so ego attached to possessions and status that possessions give us that then you're like, wait, is it even a win to have the thing? Because if I don't have the thing, do I still feel the same when I go to the place? It's like, but what, I'm with you. Like the consumerism is like Japan would be less, Europe, but you also were able to go to Europe for 2 months. That
exactly,
ticket cost money. You were
exactly.
there. And that's a joke I made to Charles, and he was saying you're in Paris. And I was like, that's got to be nice. Like, it's a good life to live, right? So it's like money affords you that, right?
Yes.
So,
So I think that there is a balance, and each person has to find that balance for themselves. It's different for everyone.
right.
So I firmly believe money can buy you happiness, but happiness is fleeting.
Mm,
So, be cognizant of that. Yes, money can buy that, but you really need to access your own personal joy. So that, especially if you're an entrepreneur, there's ups and downs with money. It
yeah.
fluctuates. You open a new business, how much are you willing to put in of your personal money, right?
Yeah.
So especially if you're a risk taker, like, you have to be able to understand that it's not all about money, even though you might have a goal that is revolving around that. So I think that it's definitely per person, but remembering that all of the joy that you need to live a happy life is within you. Of
Yeah.
course, we all
That's
need
so
to be able to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, etc. But I would say that I had to learn the hard way that possessions are not that valuable. We had the roles, we had multiple places to live, and I'm
We
like,
talked about the Rolls Royce.
yeah,
We talked about the Phantom on the show because he was
yeah,
like, he's like, yeah, it was cool for a little while, but we're like, nah, we don't. We drove our other vehicles better, and we just like them more. So
yeah. And when I got back, I really started to be interested in, what is my energetic, like, are these things giving to me, or am I giving to it?
yeah,
Just the maintenance alone, right?
you need, like, for instance, like the way I look at the value of that is like, I love the location that we live in. When we're done here, I'm going to take my daughter and we're going to go to the beach, and we're 7 minutes from white sandy beaches that people vacation at. So that's really nice. Like, that's a really good use, because then my environment and my energy for the whole week is being affected by that. But at the same time, like, and you need the healthy food. The good food costs more money than the cheap shit. So that's important. But at the same time, it's not always about like the material things. But what you said, which is so true, they own you, is like, I bought a Ford Raptor 2.5 months ago, and it's a vehicle that I really like. I like that it's a Raptor and not just a regular F-150, and that's my ego that likes that. I like to pull up in this badass new Raptor. You know what those are? They're gonna
I've had a couple.
Okay, so Raptor, so
Yeah.
So, yeah. So and then there was a recall on the cam phase of the engine. So it's at the Ford dealership, and I'm in a loaner car, which is not a fucking Raptor. And that's been 5 weeks that this has been going on. And so then I'm like living this existence the last 5 weeks where I'm like, why? I'm realizing how petty it is, how much I don't like pulling up places in this other vehicle. That's not mine.
Why am I letting a vehicle define who I am?
Why the fuck do I care? Yeah, and we had an event. I was actually driving my partner's Jetta, and we pulled up at valet at this event full of a lot of like people that we know in the real estate space. And I pull into the turn in, and I was expecting just to kind of park myself. And as I pull in, it's like it was funneled into valet, getting out on a red carpet. And I was driving, and I'm like, I hate that I care this much about this right now. Like, it bothered me, and I don't know why I did. And I was like, man, it's so true. Like, what the fuck does it even matter?
Doesn't. So I think we can be grateful that we learned the lesson young, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't learn this until their 50s. So now we understand. It's like, oh, okay, so been there, done that, and now I want something different, right?
Yeah.
I care more about the energy that I'm emitting. I care more about how people feel in my presence. I care more about, can I have the freedom that I want, than a car, garage full of cars. It just doesn't mean that much to me anymore. Yeah. And I don't think that you can understand that until you've hit some level of that. Just like you. You're like, I mean, we're talking about a Raptor, but still you feel like I'm a different man getting out of a Jetta than I am out of a Raptor.
Right. And why the fuck do I care? Right. And it's like, it's good to come to terms with it because definitely when I get it back, of course, I'm going to love it. And I'll be happy. And I'll be ripping down the streets. But I'm like, I don't need the shit to feel as good. And I
It
think,
doesn't
like,
own you. You own it.
right. The way I've come to terms with the way I look at like finances, I think like the best use of your money is environment, because your environment dictates the entire, like they say, like your frequency is what you frequently see. Right. And
Ooh, I
so,
love that. I have
yeah,
never heard that before. Good
that's
one.
actually on, I have my vision board on my phone background, if you can see this. And I
Nice.
have that quote right there because it's like, it's so true where it's like, that's the best place to put your resources. Cause like your environment is your entire state. If you're not liking where you live and it's confined, you're going to feel anxiety and not know why all the time. So like for us, like that's it. But besides that, there's a lot of, like, we're in Tampa, Florida. And I was just in Houston in December in the Woodlands area. That's where you guys are in Houston.
No, in Dallas, but still.
Oh, I thought it was Houston. I actually never been to Dallas before, but I was out there and it's very bougie and very like, all the exotics. And I was like, man, like when you're in places like that, you can sometimes feel like I need these things to feel this way. And it's absolutely not true. Where some of the happiest people I know are just like, we live on the beach. They bought a house on the beach and they live it's not even on the water, but it's on the beach town. And it's just a husband and wife in their 50s. They drink every night. They walk down to the beach. They have their retirement. They're not rich, but they're not broke. And they are happy as shit because they're just like, we're living. We're on the beach. We're on the island. They're just Jimmy Buffett season for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I'm coming to is like, whoa, how important it is. And I think a lot of times, at least for me, what I've realized is living in places that don't allow you the opportunity to be in and enjoy nature regularly. I think, and I haven't dug into proof.
No, I know what you're going to say, and you're 100% right.
Yep, they're a lot more about the what do you have, and that's why I think I ended up with 100 pairs of stilettos. In Paris, you couldn't even fit a tenth of that in the closet. It's just like nobody would be doing that. They travel, right? They jump on a train every weekend and go somewhere, and it's like the experience is so much more important than the things. But when you're in a place where experience is hard to get, then you substitute with things, and so that's why you were seeing that from my point of view.
Yeah, that is
not
true. Being disconnected from nature, it just sucks in general. Like the further away, it's a very, very city vibe here, but we have the ocean, we have the beach. That's
right.
nature. We don't have the woods. We don't have the woods, and I miss the woods. Like anytime we go anywhere, that's all I want to do is where the woods, where the mountains. That's where I want to be because that's a trip. We live in a tropical vacation destination. I don't care about those places right now. I love it. Well, Elisha, it's been so insightful to have you on, guys. Where can everyone find you?
The easiest way is Elisha Covey on Instagram. So just Elisha Covey. Super, super easy.
I love it. Guys, go follow her. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you back at the next Aliens podcast.